7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And first on the list, Val.
Thank you.
You're up.
Val.
Well, for everyone at home, I'm Valerie Gingrich, Director of Planning and Conservation. And I wanted to go over a few things that we've done this year, just to give you an idea of what we've been up to. So we have updated our subdivision regulations, which doesn't sound very exciting, but considering the document was 40 years old, I thought it was time that we do some updates. So not a lot of substantive changes. Some of them we now require vertical granite curbing. We actually lessened the width of pavement for some roads. But more so it was just kind of an overhaul of outdated language, and putting it in chronological order and making it easier for people to read. So we did that. Planning board adopted those new regs in the fall. And about the same time we started the update on the open space plan, which expires this fall. So we're sort of in that process now of updating the plan. We have a committee working on it. And been drafting some zoning and bylaw changes. One of them changes to our stormwater bylaw to respond to the new EPA MS4 permit. So some updates to the stormwater bylaw that you'll see at town meeting. And some zoning changes, well, a zoning change, responding to, we often get petitions for a zoning change up on McDonald Road in that neck of the woods, and that area is largely zoned R60, but a lot of the lots are smaller than that. So the planning board is putting forward an article to rezone some of those parcels in a more comprehensive way, rather than bit by bit that we see come in as petitions. So more on that later. And what we'll be doing the remainder of the fiscal year, some of the things, we're going to do a concept plan for streetscape improvements on Ballardville Street. Trying to get some of the folks out of their cars, rather than driving from their office on one side of the street to a place to eat or to the Target on the other side of the street, maybe providing some pedestrian connectivity so they can actually walk. So we're going to have a consultant look at just a concept for that. Where could there be a crossing? What type of crossing? Where is it safe? How that kind of generally would look. And then we'll see if we can kind of progress it to an actual design. The other thing we'll be doing is advocating for our transportation projects that are on the state's list of construction projects. Woburn and Lowell Street, we'll be moving that forward, and Route 38. So with all that, for fiscal 21, we also have some plans for plans. We're looking at doing a sidewalk plan for the town, really kind of geared towards prioritizing where we should focus on sidewalks, because you can kind of make different arguments about where and people want sidewalks. So where should the focus be? So we're going to look at a couple different tiers. Kind of top tier being within a half a mile of commuter rail stations, and also half a mile of schools. So those circles intersect in some places, and that'll be the top tier, top priority. And then a second tier, if you're in one of those circles, so within a half mile of commuter rail or half mile of a school, sort of as a second tier. And then we anticipate kind of a third tier that would look at proximity to services and trails and trail connections, sort of another tier for those. And we'll have a consultant do that work. We're expecting that to cost around $10,000 or $11,000 to do. So we'll have a planning consultant look at those tiers and kind of come up with a system for ranking and prioritizing those, so that we can have a systematic approach to what sidewalk improvements are being put on the 5-year capital plan. The other thing we'll be doing, we'll finish up that open space plan, which we're doing that in-house, so that won't cost us anything. And then we'll be doing a municipal vulnerability preparedness plan, MVP plan. So the state, well, we assume that we'll get a grant for it, actually. The state gives grants for those plans, and we're going to line it up so that ideally we'd get a grant to do the MVP plan and also do an update of our hazard mitigation plan all together, because it'll be expiring in 21, and they cover a lot of the same things, so it makes sense to just do it together. So we'll apply for a grant to get funds to pay a consultant to do that planning work for us, and that'll outline, our potential hazards. Mostly our hazards gear around flooding and storms, wind to some degree, but it'll outline all of those things. And then the MVP part of it is that as climate changes, things, whether storms get worse or we have more water, how those things in the future, we can start preparing for things getting worse or just changing. So we'll be doing that. And those are sort of the highlights, the big items, along with our usual staffing of the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, updating regs and rules as we go, and working on housing projects and everything else that comes up. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or...
Any questions for Bill?
So the sidewalk consultant, isn't that something that could be done in-house?
It could be, except that with the other things we're doing in-house, it would have to wait, I guess. We wouldn't be able to do all of those things at the same time. With the open space plan, the MVP plan, and we wouldn't be able to add the sidewalk plan to that, I don't think. But could we technically do it in-house? Probably, yeah. We just wouldn't be able to do all of those things.
We have been, as you know, over the years, adding sidewalks, and it's really been, in large measure, the Public Works Superintendent, Bob Palmer, at one point, and certainly more recently, Don Onesite and then Mike Woods, identifying, in some cases in consultation with planning, but where the next sidewalks should be, and the theme has been adding sidewalks in closer areas to the schools. Certainly the sidewalks along Shawshene Ave, those sidewalks went in, some years ago now. Aldrich Road, and the project that we're, although it's not really in proximity to a school at this point, but the project that has been going on for the last few years has been the Lawrence Street to Shady Lane, with the idea of connecting two areas. So, but rather than having kind of this informal process, it was my request that we have more of a formalized process, so that because we do get calls periodically, people looking for sidewalks. I know folks up on Andover Street would like to have sidewalks and have been making requests for some time in various other areas of town, and to be able to explain to people that there is kind of a methodology that we go through, I think is helpful.
Last year you talked about the Belvedere Street project. Have you done anything on that?
No. Well, yes, we have a consultant on board now to do the work. They'll be starting that work actually probably next month, or they may have even started. We're gonna do a kickoff meeting in the next couple weeks. And so that work will go over the next few months and wrap up before the end of the fiscal year. But kind of not a technical design or a design that could build anything, but more so looking at where people are coming from and going to figure out where could we get people across that street, considering the speed and volume and those challenges. It's not the kind of street that you just feel safe crossing. So, you know, what that crossing could look like, where it should be, links along Valor Vale to get to wherever that is, or maybe there's multiple. So they'd be looking at sort of the general concept of here's where you should put it, here's what type of crossing it could be. And then the idea would be to review that here at the town, and also start talking to the property owners, because we would need coordination with them to actually do something like that.
Are you also looking at the intersection from 125 onto Ballard Vale? Because that goes from 2 lanes into 1 lane.
Mm-hmm.
And with all the tractor trailers going up and down there, it gets kind of difficult at times,
Mm-hmm.
you know, certain times of day.
We aren't looking at any changes to the intersection itself with this study. We're more so looking at, with its existing conditions, where could we make pedestrian improvements. But I imagine that a result of what we look at could be, oh, maybe we should consider, you know, different striping. That could come out of this, but it's not the
Okay.
focus of it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Val on the subject? Do you want to go into your budget?
Sure. So, let's see. We have our personnel numbers. We, I don't know if you want me to go over those, but I'll skip down to the miscellaneous contractual services. That's proposed at 21,000. 11,000 of that would be for that sidewalk plan, and then 10,000 for other, you know, design type of planning issues that come up. It's always good to have a little bit of flexibility in the budget to have a consultant, a planning consultant, to help out where necessary. Dues and subscriptions, so we pay for different types of memberships for the Conservation Commission, for the Planning Board, for our staff, and that's at $1,500, same as last year. Advertising and printing, we have at $8,000, same as last year. Those numbers have been, we don't exactly know how to project those exactly, because it depends on what type of, or how many and what type of permit applications come in. Training and conference, we have at 2,000, same as last year. We'll have a new conservation agent starting next month, so we'll have some training opportunities coming up for her, and of course for everybody else. Office supplies, 1,500, same as last year. And then furnishings and equipment, 1,600, same as last year. Although typically we spend that 1,600 on file cabinets, which we do need. But this year I'd really like to have a couple new desks for our clerks. We're finding it becoming a little inefficient, or very inefficient, with them. They have sort of a desk and a side table thing that they have computers on, and it's the functionality of the setup is not working very well. So I'd like to try to find some furnishings that they can actually sit at their computer and use. And that about sums it up.
How much of your paperwork do you digitize?
So we have to keep a lot of paper records for the planning board, for the conservation commission. So we do ask for electronic files now, and we do scan things, but we can't necessarily get rid of all the paper. So our strategy has been to kind of go up with the storage, replacing 4 drawer cabinets with 5 drawer cabinets where we can. But we're maxed out in our office pretty much, and we do go through our files and try to thin them down where we can.
Mhm.
You know, there's an application set that comes in, and then there's maybe, you know, several revisions of plans that come in, and then there's a final plan. We can get rid of those middle plans out of the files, so we try to keep up with things like that, but we have to keep quite a bit of paper. So that's the challenge. Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
Any other questions of Val? I do have one more. Last year, we talked about the vacant properties in town. And of course, they got the Economic Development Committee out there. But any movement on some of the vacant ones? You know, Walgreens, Rite Aid?
So Walgreens and Rite Aid are interesting situations. They, I think it's Rite Aid. Rite Aid owns both, or leases both properties.
Okay.
They're still paying their leases, even though they're not located there. So the challenge is that the property owner is, you know, has an income coming in because they're paying their lease,
Mhm.
even though they're not there. And, you know, any breaking of that lease would require a high, you know, at least similar or higher paying
Rents.
lease.
Yeah.
So that hasn't happened. So it's not that no one wants to go there. It's just that they're actually being leased currently. There's
know
just
how long the leases are for at this point?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I didn't remember them expiring soon.
Do you get interest in those sites and people are scared away by the cost of the lease? Or is there just no interest at all?
I haven't heard anything. I did have the broker for Rite Aid visited me, you know, quite a while ago. He was new to the property, and he expressed that typically they're interested in leasing to someone else if it works out. And typically those leases are medical uses. And if, you know, if I heard anything about a medical use, you know, needing space, that, you know, that would be sort of an option that might work out there. But no, I haven't heard interest in those properties, personally.
It's too bad.
What about down by Lowell Street? You have what used to be the old Commercial Bank and Trust building, and there's a couple other buildings there that are vacant for a long time.
Whereabouts on Lowell Street?
Yeah, which,
Where the old Commercial Bank and Trust backroom operations used to be.
Where's that?
Where?
As you turn onto Lowell Street, right across, if you take that, you look to your right, there's the gas station, and there's a couple of buildings that are vacant.
Oh, near Charlie's or
Yeah,
Barter?
yeah.
Oh.
oh, so some of them, well, the CompuServe, that one is, that's proposed as a multifamily development.
Right, that was at town meeting a couple years ago.
Yeah, so they are hopefully going to be wrapping up their permitting with the planning board, maybe even next week, hopefully, for 39 units, multi-story building, kind of units in the back, and then 10 townhouse units up in the front, similar to what they showed at town meeting.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
And then the parcels beside there, I haven't heard anything about those from either the owners or folks interested in them.
Okay.
Um,
They've been vacant for a long time,
yeah.
you know, so.
The property behind 613 Main Street That recently went through permitting to be, used as a warehouse, just as it had
Yes,
been
ma'am.
before. Yeah. They're going to break up. It's a very, very large building
Mhm.
back there. I actually think it's a 10-acre building. It's very large. Yeah, it's big. And they're going to break it up into 3 different spaces because it's just too large. No one really wants that much space. So their hope is that if they break it up and have loading docks associated with each tenant space, that they can attract some interest back there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Anything new in North Wilmington? The area that we've talked about every year for I don't know how many years.
Mhm.
Anything new there
Well, there's
besides the apartments that?
right. Besides that, no, I don't believe so. There's a wireless tower, but that's not very exciting. But-
Upton Drive, their warehousing space there.
Yeah, up in the North Wilmington, up not right at the train station, but kind of up off of Andover Street. We've had there was a fairly large warehousing development approved this past year for 4 new warehouses off of Upton Drive. I think it was sort of at the back end of that loop up there. And there was a proposal permitted before for warehousing up there, but it never quite got started. They started to do some earth preparation, but they never went through with it. So that was permitted this year. And some turnover up off of Andover Street, some businesses locating up there. Trying to think what else, but nothing.
Monogram Foods, right?
Yeah, Monogram Foods at 330 Ballard Vale. They're doing a small addition, couple new loading docks to their facility. They're in permitting right now. But nothing really right by the North Wilmington kind of core area there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the next step with the apartments, the proposed apartments?
So they would, so the Board of Selectmen voted to support their application to DHCD, to the state. So the next step would be submitting that application to the state to get a project eligibility letter back from the state. And then the next step after that would be to apply to the ZBA for a comprehensive permit.
And when do they apply for the sewer, to extend the sewer line? Do they go through all those permitting steps first, and then they have to apply to the state in order to extend the sewer line? And
Yeah.
it was mentioned in the reports on it that the town was working with them on that.
Mhm.
Is that true? Is the town going to be financing any of that?
No, so it's the idea is to apply for a MassWorks grant. So MassWorks is a state program, and basically they'll fund infrastructure improvements if you have private development that needs those improvements. So this would be that type of situation where you have a project that's proposed that needs sewer infrastructure to work, and the culvert really. But the town has to be the applicant to the state. So by working together, I think that's what they were
Okay,
referring
that's
to.
Okay.
So the town would be the applicant for the grant. They'll do the work in putting everything together and the expense of putting everything together. But the town would be applying for the funds to actually have the sewer extended.
Okay. And they would be in charge of, who would be in charge of the construction of the sewer?
So, would be in charge of the construction. So, I believe we would be hiring, the town would be we would receive the money and therefore be hiring someone
So you
to
expend it.
do the
So
work.
So you'd be overseeing the construction then? The town would
The
be?
engineers, or engineering department, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay,
Or a hired, clerk of the works or that type
Right.
of thing, yeah.
okay, thanks.
And where is this area that we're talking about right now?
So the area right beside the North Wilmington train station, Jefferson Road,
Okay.
the sewer extension would be from the intersection of Salem and Middlesex, coming down Middlesex to the site.
Oh, wasn't that what's the word, that limited access sewer for Avalon?
No, the
Originally.
residents,
No.
the residents were allowed to tap in to that line.
I thought it was a pressurized system, that's what it was,
Yeah,
pressurized.
No, the residents can tap in.
Okay.
Yeah, so there would, they're sort of at a low point right there at Jefferson Road, so they'd pump back up, to the line up on Salem and Middlesex.
Any other questions for Valerie? Apparently not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you, you too.
Next is the building inspector, page 49.
Page
49.
Right.
How you doing tonight?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Very good, thank you.
Just before we get started, I do want to bring something to your attention.
I got-
Oh, you do, good. So, page 50, which is the statistical page, Al is actually just distributing these out. There was at the the very bottom there, total permits, it notes
This one
3,000.
changes too, Joe. This one there.
Okay. 3,920, the actual number is 1,944.
944.
Okay. Should be,
For some reason, it didn't make it to the press on time.
That's interesting. It's not even thinking that way.
Yeah. Al, do you want to start in on your budget?
On the budget, there's really, it's pretty standard as what we did last year. We're pretty much doing the same thing this year. Just the increases in the salaries. That's being done across the board, town hall wide. The miscellaneous contractual services is for the alternate building inspector, and the part-time overtime is for the part-time plumbing and gas inspector, the part-time electrical inspector, and their alternates. The other full-time would be for the new clerk that started this year, well, January 1st, or actually she started like on the 30th of December last year,
Okay.
Kelly Malatesta, who took over Tony Laraby's job for after 30 years. She's done very well. She adapt very good. She gets it, and I'm happy with her. It was a good pick.
she also covers the zoning board of appeals meetings.
You asked about that Expendex building in the back there.
Yeah.
Encore has taken a part of it, the casino. They're storing some stuff up there. And there's also some, I have a niece that's that finds things for the movies.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And she's looking at that building for whatever. I'm not sure if it's gonna be a stage or they're gonna store
Store
stuff
stuff.
there. But it's a big building. It'll be all short-term until whatever becomes with the planning board on what they're trying to do down there. But at least it's being used.
It's true. It's true.
You'll notice that it's starting to slow down.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. What slowed down on the residential has picked up, well, with the analog, that's quite an undertaking down there. I would say 90% of the rough has been inspected.
Wow, okay.
They're using 2 parts of the garage, which alleviates the parking and the main campus of itself. It's quite a building. So there's a lot of technology with just the window shades and stuff like that. It's like they spent some money there.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't have shades. They have like louvers on the windows.
Yep.
So
Yeah, one of the things they were striving for, I know, in talking to the gentleman,
Mike?
Mike Herrera, was energy efficiency. Even the parking garages are, I think they have some, do they have some kind of, they have solar up there?
right, they're gonna have solar on top of the garage,
Yeah.
on top of the garage, and I think they're gonna have something on top of they're putting something on top of the building. The younger generation has a different standard of how they wanna go to work.
Well, it's true. They were, Mike again was talking about, wanting to capture the population, as he described it, that lived in the city, wanted the amenities of, everything from the gym to other type of
Recreational.
recreational type of opportunities in the workspace, and so trying to draw the best and brightest, so to speak, from the schools and universities in the Boston area out here. They were really focused in terms of the campus on having some of those attributes. So $142.9 million,
They'll get 'em.
but they'll get them.
Is it still slow at the beginning of the year, Al, as this is reflected from 2019?
Well, it shows that it's slow in the numbers, but it doesn't show that it's slow in the office. It's, any day the phone rings, it could, you never know who's gonna walk through the door, who's gonna call you on the phone. There could be a lot of zoning questions and, what can I build, where can I build it, how tall can I build it, why can't I build it? There's a very, I won't call it lengthy, but a very in-depth way that the permit process works in Wilmington, that when the permit, I'm like the last one to get it. The assessor gets it, she makes sure that the address is correct, because it's notorious that there's all kinds of different addresses in Wilmington. So if she can straighten anything out there, she does. From there, it goes to the engineer, and the engineer looks at it for stormwater or simple stormwater, or whatever they need there. From there, it goes to conservation, then it goes to Shelley Newhouse with the septic. Thanks, Bess. And then it comes to me for zoning and building code. But it's a process, so, and actually, I think it's the right way to do it, because if there's gonna be a problem, it's corrected before it gets to me, rather than get to me and then all of a sudden you gotta go back and start again. But to answer your question, the numbers show that it's slower. I mean, the additions, we keep looking at it like there's only 18 additions this year. But, I mean, it is what the numbers say it is. There's been some big buildings commercial-wise, but I don't know if, I don't know if the banks are holding back the money, or people just can't afford to do it, whatever's out there. I mean, they're buying them, but they're just not remodeling them. They're knocking them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even that's dropped off quite a bit.
Yeah.
Single-family dwellings,
Yeah, I mean, in the last, well, like, there's gonna be I won't call it a glut, but there's some on the board now that are coming back in. The ones that were done last year were on the table the year before. This year seemed to be that there was a lot of revisions. They would bring it in, the planning board and the CDR meeting would look at it, and then they'd go back and redraw it and come back with a better plan. So that might be part of it. You know.
Any other questions for Al, or? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
It was simple.
And if you'll notice, I cut the thing to size so it fits right in.
I know.
I'm impressed.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Enjoy the rest of your night. And Shelley's going to be on page 44. Good evening. How you doing?
Good, we guess. So my budget is pretty much the same as last year. We did move, you'll see a difference in my miscellaneous contractual services, because we used to pay our part-time food inspector out of health salaries other, but technically he's a miscellaneous contractor, so Brian wanted to move him to miscellaneous contractual. So we'll be paying him out of that. So that's one big change, that you just a numbers change. This year, I marked my first year, or I'm in the middle of the year, actually, using my clinic expense account, which was appropriated last year for $20,000, so that's made a big difference in offering services to the public, which has been nice. We bought shingles vaccine so far, high-dose flu, and regular flu, EpiPens and syringes, so we're only halfway through the year, so I have about 9,000 left, which is nice to keep going with any other. Probably pneumonia, we'll be offering some hepatitis, and more Shingrix. That should be good. Do you guys have any questions?
I do, but not on the budget.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone have any questions on Shelley's budget?
How are your flu shots going? Are they
Good.
getting
We're
enough?
all done. We
Oh,
gave 270 regular flu shots. We gave 50 high dose, and we gave about 150 to those 18 and under. So we're done with giving our flu shots. In December, I had 22 confirmed cases of the flu in Wilmington, which is normal, really. It was, typically it can be higher than that. I don't have January stats yet, but December we had 22. I'm sure it's probably the same or even higher for January.
Does that come from a doctor's office?
We get through reportables, yep. Our nurse keeps track of that.
So if somebody doesn't seek medical care,
Right, we wouldn't
You
know.
wouldn't
Those
know
are
about it.
confirmed,
Yeah.
right, correct.
And the beaver permits are up.
Yeah, by 2.
what do you think is causing the decrease in office visits? It kind of went up quite a bit in 2018. And then it seemed to have settled back down again in 2019.
I think it's, she's doing more home visits. If you look at the difference, is she's just reaching more homebound people.
Oh, okay. General wellness consults at Buzzell and general wellness visits, what's the difference between the two? Shelley?
So, general wellness consult at Buzzell, that's at the senior center.
Mhm.
So every week, Tracy, our public health nurse, goes to the senior center, and she basically just spends the day there on Mondays and kind of addresses anything that any of the seniors would need, any consults. So the other one would be general phone consults from the public. That if anyone had any questions or concerns, or they needed to talk about any reportable illnesses that they had. So those would be the consults that she does out of her office for the general public. For instance, like this Monday at the senior center, Tracy's doing a healthy cooking seminar for diabetics.
Oh, what a good idea.
Yeah, so she's actually doing diabetic-friendly sweet treats, which are hard to do.
Wow.
Shelley, how do you inspect a restaurant?
There's forms that come from the state that we use, and we go through the forms, and we follow the food code, which is just a set of regulations and standards that each restaurant would have to comply with. So there are some that are critical violations, which would mean that those which are an immediate threat to the public that we would want corrected, usually on the spot or within 24 hours. And then there's other violations that they could have anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 days to fix.
So if someone didn't have their vents cleaned in 2 years, is that something you would pick up on?
Sure. Mhm.
Okay.
Usually that would probably be like a work order we would ask them to get. Because
Okay.
then, they might be at the mercy of trying to find a contractor to do that.
Okay. Do you also check the Ansel systems?
No, the fire department does that.
Okay. Would the fire department also check their breaker panel? Because there's like some that might put a electric tape over it so it doesn't shut off
Mhm.
when they have a problem. It'll keep the breaker on.
No, not that I know of.
Okay.
We not necessarily, I wouldn't normally check
Okay.
a breaker panel.
Okay.
I don't think our food inspector would do that either. It's just
Okay.
not something that's related to the food code.
Okay. So, extension cords within the building being misused, you wouldn't even check that then?
We would, for instance, I had an establishment not too long ago that was running an extension cord through the kitchen, up the wall to a new TV that they had put in. And that's just a hazard, just run across the floor, and then it was run up over some equipment.
Okay.
So they just didn't have they didn't have an outlet behind the television, so we just made them take it out and unplug it
Okay, thank
until
you.
they got an outlet.
That's all I needed to know, but thank you. Yeah. Any other questions for Shelley, or?
Have you heard anything about the coronavirus? It seems to be something new every
Yeah,
day.
I know.
They're starting to heat up with the World Health Organization
Yeah.
getting involved with it.
Nothing in Massachusetts. We've had nothing come through the Department of Public Health. The closest was those 2 New Hampshire cases that they were monitoring that turned out not to be coronavirus.
Oh, that's
But,
good.
yeah. And no, we've had nothing, no alerts, so we just get alerts every day from the state, so haven't heard anything.
Great.
Just what you guys hear, and we all hear on the news, the same thing.
Yeah.
Anything else for
Have you
Sheila?
got stock of face masks?
Yeah, I do have them. I do have stock. Be careful if you go to the airport.
They actually say they don't work.
I know, really. You're better off just washing your hands.
Yeah.
Isn't that what Dr. Oz said?
Yeah.
Build up your immunity rather than relying on
Mhm.
the masks.
Mhm.
I don't know how you're supposed to do that quickly, but.
In the Purell, it's just kind of,
Oh, yeah.
you just really use just soap and water and wash your
Yeah.
hands all the time, all day long. You're more at risk, I think, for getting the flu right now than anything else.
Although I don't, aren't you, by overusing that stuff, almost desensitizing your system to
Yeah.
block
Mhm.
some of these things? I don't know.
So now you don't even really buy hand soap that's antibacterial anymore.
Right. You
Yeah,
do, you want
because
a little bit of
a little bit
bacteria
of
out
it,
there.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It helps you form a general immunity to any of the diseases that are out there. If you have no immunity to it, then that's when you're gonna pick up every little bug that's out there.
That's for sure. Anything else for Shelley, or?
Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, enjoy the rest of your night.
Thanks, you too.
Jeff, anything
Yes.
else for us, or?
I do have, you had mentioned the one item that I need to check on the Board of Assessors, the 2019, so I'll follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
Uh,
Appreciate that.
And you had asked about the IT salary. Do you want to
Yes, yeah.
talk about
great.
that? So I asked Carrie to take a look at that, and Carrie, do you have that
I
information?
do. So what happened in fiscal year 19, the fiscal 18 salary tables were used. So, and then in fiscal 20, the fiscal 20 salary tables were used when the pink book was created. So we never used the fiscal 19 salary tables. So it was the prior year's salary tables were used in fiscal 19. And the other thing is, the individual is not at the top step, so you're gonna see more of an increase year
But that
over
large,
year.
that's
Mhm.
pretty large increases.
Right, because it was a double increase, because the fiscal 19 was really based on fiscal 18, and then 20 was based on fiscal 20.
Okay.
So in some, just to kind of further explain on that, in some budget cycles, if I have multiple unions that are coming up for bargaining, I will not necessarily announce a COLA to the non-represented personnel until I've got a couple of bargaining groups settled. So in the case of 2000
Fiscal 19.
fiscal 19, I had not announced the COLA for non-represented personnel at this time,
Okay.
back in that period. So as a result, what was published in the book was the fiscal 18 numbers, and then as we, just prior to July 1 of that year, I made the announcement, so it was, by the time it got back into the book for the subsequent year, we were talking about essentially a 2-year adjustment.
Okay.
So it'll be 2 years of step, 2 years of salary, COLA.
Mm-hmm.
And now fiscal 21 includes longevity also.
Okay.
So there were a lot of moving parts, I think, sometimes with individuals,
Yeah,
but.
I just thought that from over those 2 years, it was rather large, and there had to be an explanation. I just wanted to get the
Yes.
explanation now.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is most of your department heads are at the top step, so you don't see as much movement from year to year. But those who are
Yeah.
hired lower
Yeah.
still get the step increase too, plus the COLA. So we don't have a lot of people in that circumstance right now.
Okay.
But anytime you have a question about anything like that, I'd be
Okay.
glad to
Okay, thank you, I appreciate
research
that.
it.
You know. Do we have
Other
anything?
than that, I don't have anything else to
Okay. The next thing on the agenda is the minutes from last Tuesday's meeting, and those are unavailable right now. So what we're gonna do is plan on doing last Tuesday's meeting, next Tuesday, And then tonight's meeting next Thursday, okay, to approve the minutes. Does anyone else have anything else, or? Entertain a motion to adjourn then?
I'll make a motion to
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
We're out of here.